Hey, welcome back to the next unit in our spring cleaning category. So in this module, we are breaking down all of the different components for what it takes to get out of winter and move towards summer. This next section is really foundational for your entire life. And it's pretty important for every person in the world. So it's going to be its own unit, of course. I'm talking about the well-being wheel and self-care in general. So self-care has kind of gone through this renaissance period of everybody feeling like self-care is where it's at, and we're going to talk about manicures and massages, and we're going to talk about essential oils, and that's all great. I absolutely have no issue with any of those things. But oftentimes, we may try to do some of those things and it not make a difference for us. And the reason is because there are many components of our wellness. It is not just one thing, so there is not just one solution. When we think of our well-being, I actually envision it as a wheel. And this wheel has 10 sections. So it's much more involved than what I would expect sometimes when you think of, oh, there's these few components. No, there's 10 areas of wellness. And so we're gonna look at what that looks like for all areas of our life, because really we cannot be well overall if there are huge gaps in how we're feeling. So let's look at this slide for a moment. So in our well-being wheel, we have 10 different sections, and well-being is really all-encompassing. It's talking about assessing different areas of our health, our happiness, our fulfillment, and kind of our enoughness. You know, not everything is vital to our health in the way that we think of it medically, but our feelings of satisfaction and fulfillment and purpose are still very much a part of our well-being. Our self-care practices, on the other hand, are what we do to nourish our well-being. When we don't have self-care practices, we know how we feel: exhausted, fed up, impatient, stressed, sluggish, and very disorganized. There will never be a time in which the flight attendant says, "Quick, run around the whole plane, put everybody's oxygen mask on," right? They're going to say, "Sit, take care of you." And this is what we don't necessarily do very well, and we don't do it often enough, is to sit and assess our needs and then meet those needs. We want to be able to do that for two reasons. One, obviously, for our own well-being, and to model for our children what it means to live a whole, healthy, happy, fulfilled life. Right? It is not to run yourself ragged. It is not to drive yourself into the ground. Living a whole healthy life does not mean giving it all away until you fall in a puddle of exhaustion. We do that, but that is not what we want for our kids. And we really need to not do it for ourselves. So this is a two-pronged approach, actually. We want to be able to give our kids our best, but we can't if we're coming to them empty and depleted and tired. When we have an empty cup and they need something, we have nothing to give them. It's as simple as that. So self-care needs to be targeted and meaningful. And this is part of why someone might go off to a yoga retreat, which sounds amazing, and they come back angry or bitter or frustrated, because that might not have been tapping into the wellness component that was low for them. It could have been an amazing retreat, but it wasn't what they needed. Right? And so getting to know what you really need means the energy that you expend to fill your own cup, you're filling it with the right stuff. You know, you are not going to go to a gas station where you need gasoline and buy 3 liters of juice, right? You need gasoline. So when we know what we need, we get what we need. We don't have extraneous things distracting us or cluttering up our wellness, because the path is very clear once we know what the path is supposed to be. So let's look at these 10 categories. We have spiritual. Now, this may be faith-based, but it might not be. There are plenty of people who find spiritual wellness in nature, or, out in remote areas where it's just them and their heart and soul. There doesn't necessarily need to be a building, a mosque, a synagogue, a church. Spiritual wellness can happen in many places. If you believe it happens in a church, by all means, develop your spirituality in the way that makes sense for you. But if spirituality is not tied to a religion or not tied to an institution, you can still have spiritual fulfillment, and many people still do. But if you're low in that area, you know what it means for you to fill your cup spiritually. The next piece is emotionally. How are you feeling? When you can feel all your feelings, and I'm not kidding, all your feelings, from utter rage and despair all the way through elation and joy, and everything in between. We are not unilateral beings, right? We are multifaceted. We have feelings simultaneously across the spectrum. You could be totally falling in love with your partner and absolutely, wishing for ill will for your boss. You could be mediocre with your mom, like, could take it or leave it, but be furious with your uncle for whatever reason, right? All at the same time. So emotionality is really feeling all the feelings and understanding that we can feel all the feelings. That fullness is living. We don't want to numb out those sections. We don't want to, numb them out with shopping or gambling or drinking or drugs so that we don't have to feel them. Part of living is feeling them, processing them, releasing them, and learning from them. So emotional well-being is a huge one. Relationship well-being. If you and your partner are in dire straits and you are in winter, in conflict, in opposition, you really have a hard time going out into the world and shining in all of your glory, because your relationship is one of your most profound and complex adult love relationships. And when that's kind of falling apart, other things will suffer. So if you are low in your relationship category, there are things that we can do to boost that, but you cannot stay low. It just doesn't work that way. It will spill into other areas. Like physically, many people with emotional or relationship stress and angst will see physical manifestations. They will not be sleeping well. They will have trouble eating, either eating too much, craving sugars, craving, foods that might not be the best for them, or not eating at all and withering away just emotionally and physically. So our physical well-being is very important with the food that we're eating, the liquids that we're drinking. Are we hydrating enough? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we moving our bodies? Our bodies were designed to move, not to sit 10 hours a day, and we do it. We're sitting all the time. So, understanding your physical well-being, if that's low, how can we boost that? Social is our next category. Social really is about your relationship to people outside of your family, right? So your friends, your community, your family of origin, uncles, aunts, cousins, neighbors, school associations, professional associations, like all of those people are your social network. How are they? Like, are you healthy and strong? Do you have some friendships that really fill you up? Do you have relationships with outside of your family people? Right? Girlfriends or guy friends where you can go and nurture your individual garden. Can you go do a hobby with a girlfriend, or go, fishing or hunting or mountain biking or whatever with a group of people who are like-minded, right? So nurturing those relationships are really important to our overall well-being. Our energetic well-being is really about our presence. Being in flow, being quiet. You know when you walk into a room if there's tension, right? You can feel it and you just think, what did I just walk into? What's going on here, right? You can feel it before you even know it. There haven't even been words said and you know it, because we pick up on energy. When somebody comes in towards us and we're like, oh, that's bad juju. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm feeling the vibes and I need to move. We know, right? We have very in tune senses, and we can tell. That's our energetic well-being. And if we are not replenishing the quiet and the rest, the things that put us in flow, we're going to feel drained, right? We're going to feel drained and depleted, and it's going to be really hard to feel full in other areas when we are energetically empty. So that's the next category. Then we move on to intellectual. This one is interesting because some people will argue that you really don't need this, and I disagree. If you are in a mind-numbing job, your soul is crying. If you are in a dead-end job, if you are surrounded by people who cannot have conversations at the level that you want to have them at, you suffer. You get headaches, you feel tension, you feel tightness, you're just so stressed. Right? Intellectual well-being is a really important part because it allows our mind to stretch and grow. It really just is about learning and collecting data and organizing things in our minds, organizing things in our spaces, really tapping into that piece of us that is the higher level thinking, right? Remember our neocortex brain. That is the higher level place where we want to learn new things. We want to make things more efficient in our life. We want to learn how to automate things to make our lives easier, right? All of that is our intellectual well-being. So are you tapped into that? Then it's environmental. Our physical spaces, the homes that we're in, are they clutter-free or are we drowning in stuff? Then it goes a little bit beyond that to our communities and our neighborhoods. Are we in a good place? Are we in a good neighborhood? You know, do we feel safe? Is it clean? Then we go planetary, right? In Mother Nature, in our world. Are we settled in our space? Are we taking care of the planet? Are we mindful of our relationship with nature? You know, in reducing and reusing and recycling as best we can. That really goes to the core of how we interact with our world, is how we understand our place on our planet. And so our environmental well-being really is, can we find our place in the world and can we be a part of it to make it a better place? Our occupational well-being really is about your work. Now, it can be paid or unpaid. But as I said in the intellectual category, if you are in a mind-numbing job, you're suffering, right? You know you're destined for better things. You know you have more to offer than what this dead-end job can give you. So when you are going to work, dragging yourself out of bed, barely showing up, you're not fully engaged, right? You're not fully there. So your well-being will suffer. And the last category is financial, because as much as we want to say the world turns on love, it turns with money as well. So how are you feeling financially? If you cannot pay your bills every month, if you are really struggling, if it is paycheck to paycheck with no wiggle room, you are going to feel stress. It is going to show up in other parts. You are going to be emotionally stressed. You might have physical ailments. You might be suffering from insomnia or lethargy. You might have headaches. A million things could happen with that kind of stress, right? So financially, where are you? How are you feeling? On the next slide, we have a checkup. And this checkup is really helpful because it's just a snapshot of this moment. It is not necessarily who you were 6 months ago, and it's not going to be who you are in 6 months from now, because living is an evolutionary process, right? We can never be who we are again today. Once you finish this course with me, you will be a different parent than before you started. For better or for worse? No, of course for better. I'm kidding. So our well-being checkup is an opportunity to check in this moment. How are we doing? So look across the 10 categories and rate yourself. 0 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Where do you fall in each category? And I want you to evaluate them independently. So don't say, I'm doing great, and put a 7.5 across the whole thing when you're stressed to the max about all the bills that you have coming up and your relationship is on the rocks, right? You're not a 7.5, for sure not. So category by category, evaluate how it's going. And just be honest, because the point is you see where you're low, and then that's where your self-care focus flows, right? If you are killing it in your job and you are ambitious and you are being paid well and you are being promoted and you are just feeling like this rising star in your company, you don't need self-care strategies for your job. So we're not going to put any resources towards that. But in your relationship, it might need a little boosting. You might need to say, you know what, we need to go back to our once a week date nights because I'm feeling really disconnected, like we just don't have enough time together. Or perhaps socially, you've cut off all of your friendships because you're so busy investing in your business or investing in your work that you've cut your friendships. But that is fulfilling, right? That is how you need to nurture yourself so that when things are going well, you have people to celebrate with you. And when things are going hard, you have people to help support you, right? Your social network is a real important part of your life. And so going category by category, you're very able to say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that all of this I've been doing has hurt me physically. I've put on a few pounds, or I'm not feeling as energetic. I can't keep up with my kids. It's interfering with my sleep. I really need to look at this. Like, I need to pay attention to this. So what does that mean? I target my self-care focus into that column. And so once we get to that space, go through each of the categories that needs a little boosting. I'm going to say if you're over a 7, you're probably okay. Like, that's an okay number. If you're above 8, you're really doing great. But if you're below 7, there needs to be some support. So if you're below 7 in your spiritual side, for example, and you're like, wow, I'm down at a 2, that's kind of low. There are things you can do to support that. And what you're able to do then is to introduce this concept to your child so that they can then say, oh, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling stuck at school, or I'm feeling, like I can't run as fast as everybody else in PE. Then oh, there are things we can do about that. Let's practice running, or let's do these other things, right? So it's targeted. So not only does it benefit you, you're able to teach this to your children so they can be in charge of their wellness, which is a lifelong gift. That they know themselves to such an extent that when something isn't right, they know how to fix it. It's glorious. On this sheet, on our last sheet here, it really is an opportunity for you to brainstorm. In the areas that you're low, what would it look like for you to put in some self-care practices to support you? Emotionally, is that going into therapy or joining a support group or reading, self-help books? If it's energetic, is it cutting off friendships with people who suck you dry or drain you completely? Is it building stronger boundaries so that you aren't getting pulled into everybody else's drama? Right? So once you identify the areas that are low, add in some practices, because this is your well-being. Nobody else is going to care about you as much as you should be caring about you, right? And we want our children to care about themselves so that they're not waiting for someone else to give them some of the things that they need. They know to advocate for themselves and say, actually, I'm not going to eat that because I feel like this other thing. I'm not going to have this cake today because I've been, I think I'm just going to have an apple and be done. That's what we want. We want them to be so in touch with their life, their body, their intuition, their inner guidance, that they trust themselves. That is living fully and authentically with their talents and their gifts. And that is self-love to the max. So thank you for joining me in this unit, and I will be back in a few moments to talk about the next unit in spring cleaning.